Hello everybody, today we are working on absolute value equations. Absolute value equation. We in one of the videos I already explained absolute value means it's a distance from zero. So distance can never be negative, so it has to be positive. Now this time we are doing equations, and let's see how we solve the equations. And make sure for the absolute value we have to also check the answers, like plug them back in the original equation and see if it's making this equation true. So first example is solve absolute 6 plus 2 and absolute equal 4. Now in this absolute equation, if you pay attention really closely, this 6 plus 2n expression within the absolute is equal positive 4, which means it's going to work. The absolute value exists because it's a positive number right there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to solve the equations first, both of them, and see what my n is. So 6 plus 2n equal 4, or we are also going to do 6 plus 2n equal negative 4 and see if it would work. So absolute values, you know, it's always is going to be positive anyway. So when I solve this problem, I subtract 6 both sides. They are like terms. So I got 2n equal negative 2, and then you're going to divide it to both sides, and it's going to give me n equal negative 1. That's one answer I got. Then I'm going to go and solve that. Negative 6 both sides, you subtract. Then I got 2n equal negative 10. You divide 2 both sides, and it will give me n equal negative 5. They cancel out, and you simplify that. So that's my negative 5, and I have negative 1. Now, I don't know if these two answers are correct. I have to plug them back in the absolute this equation and see if we are getting true statements. So I'm going to plug in, like for example, I'm going to see check. So I'm going to plug that negative 1 first. So I have 6 plus 2 negative 1 absolute equal 4. So 6 negative times positive is negative 2 within absolute equal 4. 6 subtract 2 is 4 within the absolute positive and 4, and this also means 4 equal 4. So that statement is true, which means negative 1 is my answer. Let's try negative 5. So I'm going to have absolute 6 plus 2 negative 5 absolute equal 4. Then I have 6 minus 10 within the absolute equal 4. That will give me negative 4 within the absolute equal 4. Now if you pay attention, negative 4 absolute, when you take it out, it turns positive. So that's true too. It means negative 5 and negative 1 are my answers in this case. So we are good to go. So you're going to say n equal negative 1 and n equal negative 5. These are my two answers for that. Let's try another example. I have, let's try another one. 2x absolute minus 6 equal 4. Now, again, before, you start solving your problem here, make sure that you understand, is the absolute this solution, like after the equal, this number is positive? If it's positive, we can solve it further, but if it's not positive, then it doesn't exist, because absolute is not equal negative number. So let's try make the absolute expression by itself. So I'm going to go and make it by itself and add 6 both sides, so we can get rid of that 6. It will give me 10. Now I'm going to take out this absolute 2x equal 10, and I'm going to do 2x equal negative 10. Now let's see if it will work. So you divide 2 both sides, you divide 2 both sides, and you cancel, and x is equal 5 for this one. That one is cancel, and x is equal negative 5. Now let's see if the question is we plug them in the original and see if it would work, and I will get my answers. Okay, so let's try. I'm going to plug in 5 first in the original equation. 2 times 5 within the absolute minus 6 equal 4. So 10 absolute minus 6 equal 4. When I take this out from the absolute, it's going to give me 4 equal 4. So yeah, this 5 is working. And I'm going to go back and plug that one in. 2 negative 5 within the absolute minus 6 equal 4. So that's negative 10 within the absolute minus 6 equal 4. Take it out from the absolute, turn positive and 4, then it's going to give me 4 equal 4. That's true, which means this is also my answer. So we are good. Okay, now let's try another one. The question is asking solve 7x within the absolute is equal 0. Now, what is that supposed to mean? How do we solve that? We are looking for all the numbers whose distance from 0 is 0. So the only number is 0. The solution is 0. So it's going to be 0 anyway, even if you solve this like this. So you divide 7 both sides and the x is equal 0. So it's going to get 0. And you can have a negative 0 anyway, so that's 0. Okay. Let's try another thing, another example. I have solve 3x minus 2 within the absolute plus 8 equal 1. Okay, so far when I see this equation, I can tell that 1 is positive, right, after the equal, which means this expression is equal 1, and it's positive, then we are okay. But if you pay attention closely, the absolute is right there, but what I'm going to do with the plus 8, I have to move this plus 8 so I can decide whether I'm getting positive number here or not. Like in this question we moved the 6 first and I got 10. So this is working because this 10 is positive and absolute cannot be equal, it cannot be equal negative, or it cannot be equal negative anyway. So if I do this, isolate the absolute, I'm going to subtract 8 both sides. So I'm going to get 3x minus 2 within the absolute equal negative 7. This is not true. That doesn't exist. Because we already talked about the absolute is a distance, can never be negative. So when I have this absolute expression, it cannot be equal negative 7. I cannot go further and solve this. So the absolute of a number is never ever gonna be negative. So this equation has no solution. Do you guys understand what I'm doing, guys? Make sure the absolute expression is not equal negative. If it turns negative, like without solving the whole thing like we did for this question, and for this and for that, without solving it, and we get negative after the equal, then there is no solution. It doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm going to erase some of the work here, and then we can go for a few more examples. Come on. Okay. I'm going to leave this oval thing there. Okay, let's try another one. Another example is solve absolute 4x minus 5 divided by 3 absolute equal negative 8. Can I solve this? No, because this absolute expression is equal negative 8 and it cannot be equal negative 8. Solution can be negative, but not right now like this. No, when we solve the inequality, like for the x, when I get the value for x and it's negative, that's okay. But if you, in this case, you're telling me this absolute is equal negative number, absolute can never be negative. So in this case, the solution, there is no solution there. So I'm not going to solve that. Then we have another example, solve. I have 9y plus 1 within the absolute equals 6y plus 4 within the absolute. Now let's see if the statement is true or not. So I'm going to take this out from the inequalities, from the absolute, and then solve this first, and then we will go for the negative. Okay, so 9y and 6y are like terms, so I'm going to subtract 6y because I like my variables on the left. Cancel and cancel. 9 subtract 6 is going to give me 3y positive. Plus 1 equal 4. Now 1 and 4 are like terms and they have to jump over the equal sign because of using opposite operation. That's 3. You divide 3 both sides and it's going to give me y equal 1. So I got one answer right there. Okay, let's try the negative one. And I have 9y plus 1 absolute equal negative, not negative right now, sorry, 6y plus 1. I'm just writing the question first. Now I'm going to take it out from the absolute. And I have negative 6y plus 4. Okay, solve this. I will remove the parentheses first and I'll distribute that negative. So it's going to give me negative 6y and minus 4, you know, distributive property like that. Okay, 9y plus 1. So add 6y both sides. So 9 plus 6 is going to give me 15y plus 1 equal negative 4. You subtract 1 both sides and it's going to give me 15y equal negative 5. And you divide 15 both sides and it's going to give me y equal negative 1/3. So that's my another. Okay, now I have two answers, one y equal 1 and y equal negative 1/3. Now let's try and check them if both of them would give us negative 8 when we plug them in. Not negative 8, I'm sorry, when we plug them in, and we can get like exactly the same number as both sides of equal. We're going to plug in 1 here and we're going to plug in negative 1/3 again. So let's check them before we decide. So yeah, those are our answers permanently. I'm going to draw a line so we don't mess up. So I'm going to check first. 9 times 1 plus 1 within the absolute equal 6 times 1 plus 4 within the absolute. 9 times 1 is 9 plus 1 is 10. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 4 is 10. And yeah, you take it out from the absolute and it's true statement. So that is my answer. Let's try negative 1/3. So I'm going to have 9 negative 1/3 plus 1 within absolute. And I have 6 negative 1/3 plus 4 within absolute. So when I solve this, it's going to give me 3, negative 3 plus 1 equal, this one is going to simplify. So I got negative 2 plus 4 within absolute. This is going to give me 2 when I take it out from the absolute, and this is also going to give me negative 2. But when you take it out from the absolute like this, when you take it out from the absolute, it's going to give me positive. So that's a true statement again. So negative 1/3 is also the answer for my solution. Okay, so let's try one more question. Okay, let's try another one. The question is asking, solve x minus 4 within the absolute equal absolute 6 minus x. Now I have to take it out from the absolute and solve the problem. 6 minus x first with positive and then with negative. The negative is going to go something like x minus 4 equal negative 6 minus x. Okay, so you are adding x both sides. I'm combining like terms and I like them variable on my left. This is 2x minus 4 equals 6. You add 4 both sides. It's going to give me 2x equal 10. You divide 2 both sides. It's going to give me x equal 5. Okay, That's a 5. Now let's go for this one. I have to distribute. Remember, for the equation, this is an equation, so we clear the fractions by multiplying by least common denominator. We clear the parentheses by using distributive property. So the signs always multiply with signs, okay, right there. So x minus 4, this is x minus 4 equal negative 6 plus x, because negative times positive is negative, negative times negative is positive. Now subtract x both sides, cancel, cancel, okay. Then I have negative 4 equal negative 6. And if you guys pay attention, that's a false statement. Negative 4 is not equal negative 6. So I know that one is that one I don't know if it's gonna work or not. I have to try this back, plug it in the equation absolute, and if it works, good. But in this case, I don't have another one, like, you know, that's false statement, and I don't have an x value anyway. So if I plug in x in there to check if this is true, 5 minus 4, 6 minus 5, so this is going to give me 1, and this is also going to give me 1. So yeah, the x equal 5 works. Okay guys, that's it for the absolute value equation. Just make sure that you do not have the absolute expression equal any negative number, because it doesn't exist. And you may have to make sure the absolute expression, you're going to make it by itself before you decide. Like for example, it was that question, I'm just going to make it up like this. That's minus 6 equal 1. So when I see this, I say, okay, this one is positive, which means this expression, the absolute expression is equal positive 1. Why not exist? But you know that there is also negative x in this whole thing. So I have to get rid of negative 6 and make sure this absolute is equal. This absolute is equal. I'm going to make it positive so I can have a negative. So this absolute has to be by itself before we decide about this number after the equal. So if I subtract 6 both sides, it's going to give me absolute x plus 5 equal negative 5. Now this is not true. That's the reason I have to make it by itself before I decide does it exist or exist. Okay, so any questions, please come in, write it down in the comment. I will help you with it. And also, if you guys have any questions or problems, I can make a video for you guys and then help you out. Please like my video and subscribe. I would appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Bye guys.